Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sultan. I'm the Research Fellow at the Islamic Arts, Architecture and Urbanism Master's Program at the College of Islamic Studies in Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha. And today we are extremely delighted to welcome you to a very interesting topic, which will be our first online public lecture brought by the Master's Program of Islamic Art, Architecture and Urbanism in the College of Islamic Studies at Hamad bin Khalifa University, in collaboration with Oxford University and the Museum of Islamic Art and others. Today's topic will be presented by Dr. Mohammed Tarek Swelim, who will be discussing the exciting life and career of the Mamluk Sultan Al-Muayyad Shaykh. Dr. Tarek is an associate professor of Islamic art and architecture. He is also the coordinator of the Master's Program of Islamic Art, Architecture and Urbanism at the College of Islamic Studies. Dr. Tarek obtained his PhD from Harvard University at 1994, and he has an MA from the American University in Cairo and a bachelor degree in Egyptology and tour guiding from Helwan University in Egypt. He has taught at the American University in Cairo and Ain Shams University. He also lectured at several universities in the USA and at Oxford University in London, just to mention a few. Dr. Tarek is the author of Ibn Toulon, his Lost City and Great Mosque book, which was published in 2015, and his new book on the history and architecture of the Mamluk Sultan Al-Muayyad Shaykh is now in the press. He is currently working on a new project about the history of the Mamluk period, as well as writing a novel titled Al-Masri in Fustat and Beyond, which is a historical and romantic thriller. Very exciting, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Tarek.
Hello, Suzanne. Thank you very much for this nice introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Tarek. Thank you for joining us today. It is wonderful to have you. Just before you start, allow me to remind the audience and our listeners that, inshallah, there will be a Q&A section at the end of this lecture. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to write them down in the chat box or Q&A box. I will be reading them and addressing them to Dr. Inshallah at the end of his presentation. Dr. Tarek, thank you so much. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Suzanne. Welcome all to from my office in Cairo. And this is the first time for me to give such a presentation. So it's kind of challenging to talk for people from all over from this place, and it's quite interesting. I am delighted and honored that you're all here. I know everyone is busy, and it is a time when things are rather difficult. So I'd like to make this lecture a little less dense than others in life. The lecture is about the life of Sultan Al-Muayyad Shaykh and his mosque, and obviously the unique inscriptions. Why that's so interesting? Simply because Sultan Al-Muayyad was a great Mamluk Sultan during the middle period of the Mamluk period. When we talk about the Mamluks, we are talking about the golden age of Egypt, Misr, and Bilad al-Sham. Bilad al-Sham is Palestine, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, the Hijaz, southern, what is now Turkey, and parts of Iraq. So this was an empire that was already been established by the Ayyubids. The last Ayyubid Sultan, Sultan Salih al-Din Ayyub, a genius, managed to collect these Turks that were from Central Asia and brought them over, and they became his secretaries as well as his bodyguards and formed great armies. When he died, eventually they took over the empire and they took over affairs, and they also proved to be very powerful. Why? Because in the 13th century, we had this terrible attack by the Crusades and another one by the Mongols. And what happened is that the Mamluks of Salih al-Din Ayyub managed to fight the Crusades and defeated them. And then later on, when the Mongols attacked Syria, Bilad al-Sham, they managed to go ahead and fight them and also defeated them. By that, they had defeated the greatest threats of the Near East, became the superpowers of this area. They were in charge of the Hijaz, the pilgrimage, Mecca, Medina, were under the control, Egypt, and all of Bilad al-Sham. Why is all this important? Because they were in control of the trade routes that were going east, west, north, and south throughout this area. And the Near East was always very important in history because of the tremendous trade routes in order to reach from east to west, and from west to east, and from north to south, whether it is for commercial reasons or for pilgrimages, of all kinds of pilgrimages. Okay. So we have the Mamluk period is really divided up into two periods. The first one is called the Bahari Mamluks. The second is called the Circassian or the Burji Mamluk period. Sultan al-Muayyid was kind of in the middle. He was in the early 15th century, and he was, like all Mamluks, bought from Central Asia and became a Mamluk of a great Sultan, very famous Sultan called Sultan Barkuk. And he managed to find his career in the hierarchy of the Mamluk Empire, and simply managed to take over the throne. But how did that happen? That's most important. And this is where I'm going to start sharing my slides. And that's the Mosque of Umayyad, another title page. The pyramids of Egypt. And the pyramids have always been there, and the pyramids have always been a warning and a kind of a challenge for all rulers of Egypt. Everyone who came to rule Egypt looked at the pyramids and wanted to build something like the pyramids. And Islamic Cairo is kind of at the balance with ancient Egypt. So ancient Egypt is on one side, Islamic Cairo is on the other, and because of the richness and the greatness of Islamic Cairo, we can consider it as equal as ancient Egypt. Of course, ancient Egypt much longer and all of that. Many of you will disagree, but the urbanism and the architecture and art and richness of Cairo makes it quite outstanding. All the rulers of Egypt came and looked at the pyramids and wanted to build a pyramid. But they did not build a pyramid, but each one built a pyramid of his own. It's not a triangle with four sides. Everyone wanted a great project to be remembered forever. First of all, it's ego, it's power, it's whatever you want to call it. But because of the pyramids, rulers built monuments to last, and they wanted to eliminate those before them. The Mamluks were during the period between 1250 and 1517. Mamluks looked like that. They were great soldiers. They were Turks, so they didn't look like us. So round faces, eyes, elongated eyes, or big cheeks and all of that. And they were great horsemen. And they were constantly training on their horses in order to become good soldiers and in order to become quite disciplined. They were training with their spears, aiming. They were going with the horses round and round and round in circles with the spears and then there is the bow and arrow. The bow that you see here is quite different from the ones that we are used to, because the bow here reminds us of that of William Tell. If you know about William Tell, that's the same thing. You just shoot that way. So they were on the horse with fire spears as well. They played polo, and they knew how to fight man to man. And if you look at the bows and arrows right here, you find them that they're very small. They are small, they're very easy to aim, shoot, and hit, and run very fast if they are on their horse, or as you can see in this figure. They use catapults, manajik, as you can see here, in order to take over citadels and things like that. Shaykh al-Mahmudi, actually, the name of Sultan al-Mu'ayyid Shaykh was only applied when he became the Sultan. But al-Mu'ayyid was known as Shaykh al-Mahmudi. He was an emir. He was started his career in the military, becoming prominent member in the royal family, and under Barkuk, Sultan Barkuk, that's in the late 14th century. Sultan al-Mu'ayyid, Shaykh al-Mahmudi became free, and he became a kind of, started his career in the high positions of Jamdar, Saki, Amir Tablakhana. We don't have to explain all of these because some of you don't know about these titles, but Master of the Robes, Cupbearer, he is the Lord of the Drums, he is the Chief of the Guards, meaning that he knew all about the system within the palace and how he knew where to go, and he knew the areas that he could not reach as well. And this gave him very good experience in continuing his great strategies in policy in order to become the Sultan. Sultan Barkuk was not eliminated, he was deposed for a few years, around 1390 by a Mamluk emir called Bintash. Not very important, but I mean, he was deposed, and then he got all the emirs of Sultan Barkuk and imprisoned them in a horrible, terrible prison called Khazan al-Shama'ir. Khazan al-Shama'ir was the worst prison ever that anyone could enter and be detained in. The location of Khazan al-Shama'ir is right behind the southern gate of Cairo called Bab Zuwayla. That's very important, we'll come to that later. He served after Sultan Barkuk's death. He served under his son, Sultan Farag ibn Barkuk. Farag ibn Barkuk ruled for 11 years in the early 15th century, and the guy had great trouble with the Mamluks of the emirs of his father. Why was that? Because it was not accepted, however it was applied, not accepted that the son of a Mamluk Sultan would become a Mamluk Sultan. And the reason is that they did not consider the sons of Mamluks as proper Mamluks. They were considered as people known as the Awlad al-Nas, sons of the elite. They did not go through the trouble to become Mamluk soldiers, and they did not go through the trouble of becoming real harsh people. They looked down upon them. Farag ibn Barkuk was looked down upon by the emirs of his father because they simply wanted to take over. For 11 years, Sultan Farag ibn Barkuk started to fight. He was constantly rejecting the power of all these great Mamluk emirs who were rich, who knew about administration, who knew about war, and all of that. We find that our Shaykh al-Mahmudi, Sultan al-Mu'ayyid, sometimes he becomes closer to Sultan Farag because of the loyalty with his father against the Mamluk emirs, and more so against Sultan Farag if Farag did not really do things he wanted. I always wanted to become a governor of this place, a governor of that place. He would agree, sometimes not agree. All of them were playing games with each other. And the whole thing is about loyalty and disloyalty. But something happened in the early 15th century. Tamerlane attacked Syria, Asham. He massacred the city of Halab and continued south to Damascus. Once Sultan Farag ibn Barkuk knew about that, he got his armies with all his emirs and left Egypt and went to encounter and fight with Timur Lane. Timur Lane sacked the city of Damascus. As you can see, this is a painting. I don't know the authenticity of this painting, but it shows the whole thing. Timur is the one on the horse, so the Mamluks and whatever are down, bowing, and bending and all of that. But it gives you the idea. But Sultan Farag ibn Bar'u escaped. He didn't stay with his Mamluk emirs, leaving his Mamluk emirs to face Timur. Who had to face Timur? It was Al-Mu'ayyid or Shaykh al-Mahmudi had to face him. He fought certain battles, but managed to defeat Timur sometimes, a very small defeat, and then he managed to be imprisoned, and then he escaped somehow. Things that are not very clear in history, how he managed to escape from all this, but something happened at that moment. And that is, we find that the great historian Ibn Khaldun goes and meets with Timur Lane. Here we can see a painting. Again, I don't know the authenticity of the painting, but we can see that Ibn Khaldun is the guy who is on the lower left, Timur Lane. He's asking him about the land of North Africa. Ibn Khaldun simply asked for a few days to prepare the portfolio or the report, and came up with the idea that North Africa is not a place for you, and simply tried to convince Timur Lane not to continue south to Egypt and North Africa. Eventually, Timur Lane was convinced and left. Ibn Khaldun played an important role in this period. But the emirs decided that it is time for Farag ibn Bar'u to be eliminated. And many battles took place between them. Sultan Farag ibn Bar'u was in Egypt. And then Emir Nawruz al-Hafzi was in Asham, which means Damascus, Aleppo, all this area. The Emir Shaykh al-Mahmudi, who became as Sultan al-Mu'ayyid, was in the area of Gaza and Palestine. Somehow, they managed to besiege Sultan Farag and arrested him. And because they were both, Nawruz and Shaykh were both very cautious about each other, they decided that the best thing to do was to appoint the Khalifa al-Musta'in Billah as the Khalifa Sultan. Of course, when the Khalifa Sultan got the message, he was terrified. But they convinced him assured them that everything would be okay. This happened to be the first time for a Khalifa to take the role of Sultan in our history. So, the Caliph then appointed Shaykh al-Mahmudi as Atabek al-Asakir, which means that he was the commander-in-chief. He was given the title of Nizam Mulk, so he was in control of affairs with unrestricted power to appoint and dismiss officials in Egypt and elsewhere, whereas Nawruz was in Syria, in Asham. Sultan Farag was killed, not by al-Mu'ayyid, but by orders. Other emirs went and had him killed. Both Nawruz and Shaykh al-Mahmudi had this ruse arrangement of Shaykh being in Egypt, Nawruz being in Sham. The Khalifa resided in the citadel in Cairo, and Shaykh al-Mahmudi al-Mu'ayyid had his office down at the entrance of the citadel. Shaykh managed to be the one in control of affairs. 1 year later, he deposed the Khalifa, went and fought with Nawruz, eventually arrested him and had him killed. Shaykh al-Mahmudi became Sultan al-Mu'ayyid. Al-Mu'ayyid had a peaceful reign. But he was promoting his son, Ibrahim al-Sarimi, in order to go and send campaigns into greater Syria, Bilad al-Sham, and even in the southern parts of Anatolia. In 1419, we have this map. The orange that you see on the left side is the Mamluk Empire, with all the campaigns that are reaching now Kayseri, Diyarbakir, Konya in Anatolia. And east of that was the Karakuyunlu kingdom, and east of that was the Timurid Empire. And then we had the Ottoman Empire west of that. Once he had reached, Ibrahim al-Sarimi had reached Konya and Diyarbakir, the news came to Sultan al-Mu'ayyid that his son was now plotting to depose him. Immediately, Sultan al-Mu'ayyid ordered for Ibrahim al-Sarimi to be poisoned with cyanide. And he's buried inside his mosque that we're going to talk about right here. The mosque was greatly admired by Maqrizi. It was greatly admired by Pascal Tost in the 19th century, and David Roberts, all the famous artists who came to Egypt. Beautiful lithographs were made. And it's a great building in a very, very difficult site. Because this place was constantly, it was full of buildings. It had the prison, it had qaysariyas, which are like wakalas, commercial buildings, it had houses, it had lots of hotels. Sultan al-Mu'ayyid simply demolished all and took the marble and the iron grills and probably the stone to build his mosque in that place. Some of you have seen this place, Mosque of al-Mu'ayyid, and admired it like all the rest. But there was a problem there, because he did not build his mosque in the area of the Bain al-Qasrain, the area between the two palaces. This sketch shows you the Fatimid city of Al-Qahira, shows you the Bain al-Qasrain, shows you the western and eastern palaces, shows you the Qasaba Street, Shari al-Mu'ayyiz today, and the Mosque of Al-Azhar. With the end of the Ayyubids, the eastern and the western palaces were replaced by great buildings. In the late Fatimid period, we had new walls built around, and we had the gates of the towers that we're going to see later were built here, incorporating the Mosque of Al-Hakim. The Mosque of Salih Tala'a was built outside the Bab Zuwayla area, and we have these great gates and towers of Cairo. All the greatest Mamluk, last Ayyubid Sultan and Mamluk Sultans built their monuments in the area of Beni Qasrin, replacing those palaces, which was eventually the thing that Sultan al-Mu'ayyid would have done. No way. The area that was offered to him in front of one of the buildings was a great place for him to compete with the other sultans, but he did not agree. He wanted to build there. So we have the location of the Mosque of Al-Azhar, the Mosque of Salih Tala'a, right here. The area of Beni Qasrin had this one. It had the madrasa, the great madrasa of Salih Najmuddin Ayyub, the last Ayyub al-Sultan who actually founded the Mamluk system, and his dome, his mausoleum. Then came his successor, after a few ones, Baybars al-Bunduqdari, where these guys are standing. This is the remains of his madrasa that is occupying the eastern palace of the Fatimids, destroying the palace, building these instead. And then opposite, if you stand where this guy in pink is standing, you look the opposite. You have the madrasa of Baybars, and then right opposite is his successor, the great Sultan Qalawun, with its fantastic facade, very Sicilian inside. And next to that one was that of Nasr Muhammad, Sultan al-Nasr Muhammad ibn Qalawun, with its unique Gothic portal. And adjacent to it is the founder of the Turkashians, Sultan Barkuk himself, building his monument right there, all one stuck to each other, everyone stuck to the other. And Sultan al-Mu'ayyid didn't want to go into that. He wanted his own thing, somewhere else completely. And this is Sultan Barkuk's building, quite a masterpiece. He wanted to build there, where outside, in front of the Mosque of Salih Tala'a, as well as the Zawiya of Faraj ibn Barkuk, his competitor, and he built, well, details, and he built his mosque behind Bab Zuwayla. This is the plan of the building. You have the towers on the right there, and then you have the great mosque there, and then when you look on the left, there is the great Hammam. So, we have this, and the Bab Zuwayla was then usurped by Sultan al-Mu'ayyid Shaykh, building the most unique minarets on top. One way, he took over the Bab Zuwayla visually, great challenge, very, very aggressive, and at the same time becoming the symbol of Cairo at some point. Bab Zuwayla was the most prestigious commercial center in Cairo. Everyone coming to Cairo went to Bab Zuwayla, and the commercial activity was tremendous. He took over with these two great minarets right there. And once you walk through the Bab Zuwayla and the great arch, you are struck by this fantastic facade. A facade that only imposes monumentality, and you get the grandeur of Mamluk period in the city of Cairo through that gate and through this arch. The facade, and then the great dome of the Mosque of al-Mu'ayyid Shaykh. The visual effect is interesting because we can see that you walk through the Bab Zuwayla and you see the facade of the mosque. But then when it comes to the portal is tilted a little bit to the left, because those coming from the north to the south, they can first see the portal and then the facade after. And this is the impression that we have right there. Stalactites, a wonderful hood, tiers of stalactites, one after the other, and then arabesque designs all over in a trefoil or tripartite. So going back to Bain al-Qasrain, I know we are losing time. I'm going to go very fast. Okay, Bain al-Qasrain, we have Sultan Nasser, Sultan Sultan Salih al-Bedin Ayyub, Baybars al-Bundukdari, Sultan Qalawun, Sultan al-Nasr Mohammed, Sultan Farag, Sultan Barqut, the plan of Sultan Mu'ayyid, Bab Zuwayla. Behind Bab Zuwayla, you have the mosque, and then the hammam is on the left. And then this is what happens. He usurps the Bab Zuwayla, which is the most prestigious commercial center in Cairo. Builds his minaret right over the tower. Usurps the gates, and this becomes the symbol of Cairo as well. You walk through the arched entrance of Bab Zuwayla. You have this incredible facade showing great monumentality. It is tilted so that you are struck by this extreme magnificence of the facade. But the portal is tilted a little bit so that you see it when you're coming from the north to the south. And this is, I mean, it speaks for itself, the tripartite frame. You have the semi-hood, you have the stalactites, you have arabesque designs, inscriptions, you have the square Kufic inscriptions here, and then the great door that's inspired by Sultan Nasr Muhammad's mihrab of stucco. This is the door that was used. It was stolen, but stolen by Sultan Mu'ayyid from the Mosque of Sultan Hassan. He only paid 500 dinars for it. And then this unusual decoration, we don't see it anywhere before, after, very, very strange. The door is magnificent, absolutely magnificent door of Sultan Hassan. Excuse me. You enter, you look up, and you have this fantastic vestibule with the groins, and all these are all in stone and culminating in the centralized in the center of it, making a cross with stalactites, and then the mirror effect of what you have outside into inside, and then reflecting back on the right. I know this is too much information, but it's absolutely breathtaking. You walk from the vestibule, and this is the door there. You enter the great dome, the mausoleum of Sultan al-Mu'ayyid there. Looking up, you have a great dome, and then it's all supported by Muqarnas pendentes. It speaks for itself, as you can see. Great heights. The dome is decorated with chevron patterns, and this is the view of Cairo from on top of Bab Zuwayla, and you have the chevron patterns that are inspired by or repeat or imitate those of the Khanka of his predecessor, Sultan Farag ibn Barqut, the chevron. Of course, you have mausolea were great, and of course he had at the back of his mind, he had that of Sultan Hassan, which has extravagance in its marble decoration and great inscriptions. Here it's very plain, because he wanted to make good relations with the Sufis. He was very passionate with Sufis. But then when it came to his own cenotaph, it is not Mamluk because of the inscriptions. The inscriptions are very early. They are probably from the Ikhshidid period. Arabesques start to spring out. They start to be born. As you can see in the ends of the letters, there you have the leaves springing out, and then the symmetrical decorations. This is the cenotaph of his son, the one he killed. Next to him, doesn't say much on the inscriptions, but then you walk into the mosque, and you have this extravagance and fantastic marble display on the Qibla wall. A Qibla wall that probably has no equal in the Islamic architecture of Cairo. All this wall is decorated in marble panels that have been taken from the houses and the palaces and all the buildings that he had destroyed. And you have a dikka right there, very fine marble dikka. This is from the other side, from the opposite side, looking at it. You can see the minbar. And it is a minbar, wonderful minbar, a masterpiece of a minbar with its juggling of the star patterns, and absolutely great in every aspect. This is the other side of it, the minbar, and the dikka. This is the walk. These are the doors that lead to the mausolea. Also masterpieces of woodwork, all inlaid with ivory, star patterns, ivory, ebony, I think. And the inscriptions above, Naskhi inscription with a floral designs that are, look at it. I mean, very hard to read the inscription, the Naskhi inscription, because of the heavy floral designs behind in the background. Very, but very, very fine work. Now look at the Qibla wall. We can see the mihrab, the minbar, and the wall is divided into two parts. Marble, extravagant marble, excessive marble, and then a part above the marble has windows. And these windows are framed by unique inscriptions. Wow, the unique inscriptions. And this is showing the windows and then the upper windows, and then it shows how the inscription runs around the whole facade, over the windows, over the mihrab, and ends at the end right there. Actually, these are windows that have, these are inscriptions that have not been read before. There are two inscriptions here until the Kurdi, where you see that wooden log suspended from the ceiling. And then you have another inscription which goes that way. One of them is Sulus, the yellow one is Sulus, thick, bold Sulus, and then the blue one is Kufic inscription. Okay, we can see that this is, why is it so unique? Well, it has not been read before, these inscriptions. Why? Because they're very high up, they're dusty, they are dim, they need cleaning, they've not been restored badly. And we can, with this collage, we can make up something. It starts here with a Sulus. And then you have Al-Umran, prayer of Al-Umran, and we have another Kufic inscription above, which comes over. These inscriptions were never read before. And thanks to zoom lenses and cameras that we can reach them, instead of getting ladders and going up and tracing them, and we can see that it is a Sulus, and then above it is another frame in Kufic. As you can see, the blue one is the Kufic. This is something, combination of both, is something that we don't have at Cairo. We only have it in Qur'ans of the period, like the one I showed you, and this Qur'an manuscript from Sultan Sha'ban, 1355, as far as I remember, where you have Kufic on top, and then you have the Sulus, and then you have Kufic at the bottom. Then we have another inscription. The other inscription continues around and then goes above the minbar, and then it continues all around, and it's full of details, as you can see, and well, the study makes one wonder how exciting this is, because when you get the actual surah of a Tawbah, which it represents, we find that the yellow part, which is highlighted here, is not in the inscription up there. And where is it missing? It's missing where the minbar is. So you have the minbar, above the minbar there is the dome of the minbar. So the inscription goes this way, and then it goes that way, and then above, this is missing. Why? Nobody knows, but it's interesting. So the inscription continues above the windows, one after the other, and then it ends there, it ends here, and it ends in a foundation inscription. Amar bin Shah has a Jami' al-Mubarak, and then it goes the Blessed Mosque, which was built by the remembrance of God, Sultan al-A'zam and Malik al-Malik, Malik al-Mulk, or Malik al-Malik, al-Mu'ayyid Abu Nasr Shaykh, that's his name. The Sultan of Islam, Sayyid al-Muluk, Sultan al-Islam, wa Sayyid al-Muluk, wa Salatin, the Sultan of Islam, and all Muslims, and Lord of Kings, and Sultans, the exterminator, قاتل الكفر والمشركين مصر الحق بالبراهين منصف المظلومين, the infidels and false theists, and the living evidence of justice and its testimony, the equitable of the oppressed from the oppressor, the refuge of the poor and humble people, الظالمين وكهف الفقراء والمساكين. All this is okay, and then it comes here, all of a sudden, زخر الأيتام والمنقطعين حامي حوزة الدين, the succor of the orphans and the rejected, defender of the faith. قسيم أمير المؤمنين. Wow, a great title. Why? Because he is now the partner of the Khalifa, Amir al-Mu'mineen, because he put him in power, and then he deposed him, and then he became his Qasim. This inscription is never found anywhere except one time, earlier during the time of Baybars, Sultan Baybars al-Bukhari, where he brings over the Khalifa from Baghdad, or brings the relative of the Khalifa from Baghdad and makes him a Khalifa. Then he gives his title Qasim Amir al-Mu'mineen, the partner of the commander of the faithful. صاحب العالمين خادم الحرمين. So the owner of the two worlds, the servant of the two noble sanctuaries, Mecca and Medina, of course. الشريفين ملك العرب والعجم والترك والديلم. King of the Arabs and the non-Arabs and the Turks and the Daylam. Where did the Daylam come from? And we can see that the inscription is so crammed all of a sudden in this place. He has all this space, and then he comes at the end and cram the inscription there. You cannot see it, but it's there. When you come to read the titles on the Dikka, and this is probably the only Dikka in Cairo, in Islamic Cairo, that is with inscriptions giving the titles, we have the inscription there that does not mention the titles that I just gave you, right here. Interesting. So as I said earlier, in 1419, Ibrahim al-Sarani, the son of Sultan al-Muayyid, went and crossed and sent campaigns and reached Diyar Bakr, Konya, Kayseri, and all this area in Anatolia and eastern Anatolia. But where is Daylam? Daylam is there on the eastern part of that. It is in the area of the Kara Koyunlu Empire or Kingdom. It is known that during that period, Sultan al-Muayyid had coins stuck in his name there. And Sultan al-Muayyid also had his name ending the khutbah on Fridays in that area. So it was probably or maybe a political ambition that Sultan, he didn't reach there, but maybe it was his ambition that he was going to reach there and he was going to have full control over this place. But then he had to kill his son. Something of the sort. So it's either before this or his ambition was political strategy, was to go over to Daylam. Daylam is maybe the end of the world, but this is what we have right here. The mausoleum, and this is the tomb of the warrior, his great warrior, Ibrahim as-Sarimi, who news reached the Sultan that he was plotting against him and becoming very powerful. So he had him poisoned and killed by giving him cyanide. The man killed his own son for power. The Ibrahim as-Sarimi might be compared with Commodus, the emperor Commodus. Inscriptions of that size were found, foundation inscriptions were found on facades of buildings like that in Kalauma. But then here in Al-Mu'ayyid, he put it inside the building and it's bold and thick and big. But the foundation inscription doesn't have a date. And that's kind of strange. But then between the windows, we have the Bukhariya design that we see here. Very nice. But then after the Bukhariya decorations, we have rectangular, you see here, we have rectangular panels that we can see in between these windows there. Okay? I'll show you, these are the panels that are very strange. Panels that are very Persian in style, panels that have this climbing arabesque going up, culminating around the vase or something. And then we can see that the inscription is going around them, but this is not the unique thing about them. Unique thing about them is here. This inscription that we see on top, Kufic and Sulus. We can see that it can be divided in half. And what we see here on the right is mirrored to the left. Same with the Kufic above. This is the Al-Musanna style. Al-Musanna style. Okay, more interesting is that when we take this square and we read it, we find that the inscription goes this, it's from Surah Al-Baqarah, okay? So it goes this way, and then it turns and continues at the top in Kufic. So first it's in Sulus, and then it continues in Kufic. Never did that happen before. Again, it hasn't been read, it's too far away, it's very high up, very strange. Same can be said about the left side, which is the mirror effect. Of course, it's like getting a mirror and looking at the inscription. This is what we have. The inscription goes this way, of course, from left to right, but up, strangely. And then it goes this way, and then it is read that way if you can read it. Never did we have something like this before in the Islamic architecture of Cairo. Same on the other panel, we have the same thing, but we don't have to repeat what I just said. It is repetitive. This can only be found in Mardin when it first started, actually, okay, in one of the inscriptions. And we know that during the Ottoman period, they were very clever in such things. In the complex of Shaykh, Amir Shaykh, 1355-57, we can see that there is a detail taken by my friend Noha Abu Khatwa. There is a Kufic inscription, which is also mirrored that way. There is some sort of mystery here that needs to be studied more. Sultan al-Muayyid was very passionate with the Sufis, therefore he did not put any kind of excessive decoration in his mausoleum, but he did that in his mosque. But also he was a little crazy about inscriptions. Going back to the vestibule, I showed you this before, but this is a better photo. We have these two panels. These two panels, very high up also, show you, this is the first one, and this is the second one, and these show you the largest square Kufic panels in the Islamic architecture of Cairo. This is the Ayat al-Kursi, very, very high, that even cannot be read. It's fantastic the way that's done. Of course, it's Carrara marble, probably, and basalt stone, which is black. And all this is absolutely magnificent. Why did he do this? He is crazy about it. The inscription is, or the ceiling is, of course, magnificent, and this needs a lecture on its own, actually. It's all wood, gilded inscriptions, I mean, amazing. And we have this part of the mosque, which has a door there, but then it has a door on this side for a window. The back side of this is the back side of Bab Zuela. And behind that door was a blockage, a blocked entrance. You can see the lintel there. And you can see the brick wall or the stone wall walled up, which shows you that there is something that was open at one time and then it was closed, blocked up. And the gentleman that you see here is the gentleman who is giving you the lecture during his youth, many, many years ago, believe it or not. What is all this? We have the Bab Zuela here. We have the new entrance going up to Bab Zuela, but above the entrance you can see some new stones. Old photographs by Cresswell Fine show you the same entrance, and above there is a window, which is kind of a walled up big window, which, referring to the Waqfiyah, is this area of the mosque, where the imam or the khatib would enter the mosque, and he would enter the Qa'at al-Khataba, and he would, Qa'at al-Khataba, which is his office, and then he would do his research in his Zanat al-Kutub, which is a library. I'm sorry, the circle shifted that way, probably when I was seeing about the lecture, so I'm sorry about that. So he would enter through his private entrance. The Khatib would enter into Qa'at al-Khataba, into the Khazanat al-Kutub, do his research, prepare himself, walk through that corridor, and into the mosque to the minbar to deliver the Friday speech. And this is where he would go, climb up the minbar and give the Friday speech from there. The minbar is again a masterpiece, which has been well recorded by the Nadim Foundation today, and very soon you're going to find something great done about this wonderful minbar in research and whatever. It's a great masterpiece. We have the mosque itself, beautiful, of course, it's been restored, rebuilt, whatever you want to call it. You have the plan of the mosque. On the left side, you have a great hammam. This is a photo taken in 1985 from the top of the minaret. The same photo is taken a few years ago by my friend Matthias Kasiknik. And way far away, this is after it's been rebuilt, way far away we have this building. And that is the dome of the great Hammam. Hammam is a public bath, we all know about that. But it's no small public bath. It is the largest public bath that we have in Cairo, in the Islamic architecture of Cairo, having the largest dome, and the dome is supported by these fantastic stalactites and muqarnas, tiers. If you count them, you'll find them 9. We can make them 9 tiers, 10 tiers if you like. Absolutely magnificent, magnificent. Sultan al-Muayyid Shaykh managed to impress us, and he definitely managed to build a pyramid of his own that became a symbol of Cairo. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tarek. Thank you for this amazing presentation and for this very intriguing lecture. I guess many of us are really unaware of how important this Mamluk dynasty to the history of our modern world. We have so many questions received so far, but allow me to start with one question of my own. Okay, so my question goes back to before the Mamluk dynasty start. To the Mamluks in specific, where did they originally come from, the Mamluks?
The Mamluks came originally from the area between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, and also the area which is southern Russia today. That's basically, so we call that Central Asia in general. Mm-hmm. But so it's the area between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, that's where you have Armenia, Georgia, etc., and then southern Russia, and then it expands. But originally they were from the Kipchak tribes.
Mm-hmm. And what about the system, their system? Who started it?
This is 2 questions now.
Okay.
The idea of the Mamluks to have bodyguards is not Islamic, by the way. The idea of the Mamluk, the idea was actually from the Roman period, and the Romans used to bring the Germans bodyguards to take care of them, and they became the prefects. And but then in the 9th century, we have in Samarra we have the Khalifa bringing bodyguards, Turks from Central Asia to protect him and to build armies from these Turks. One of them was, for example, Ahmad ibn Tulun in the 9th century, who came. He was kind of a Mamluk. But then the one who founded the Mamluks that we're talking about today, the Mamluk Empire, was the last Ayyubid Sultan, and that his name was Sultan As-Salih Naqb-ud-Din Ayyub in the middle of the 13th century. So the Ayyubids at that time were fighting amongst themselves. He didn't trust anybody. He didn't trust his brothers who wanted to take over. So he got thousands of these Mamluks from Central Asia to protect him. So when he died, they were the only ones to rule the empire. And this is how they became in charge.
Wow.
It's very, very briefly, but it's very complicated at the same time. But yeah. It's, well, you can read it in the book.
In your book, Ibn Tulun?
No, the Mamluks.
The Mamluk history.
About Sultan al-Muayyid.
Okay, Doctor, it seems like a very powerful dynasty. So how come it's not as present as it should be in our cultural awareness?
The cultural awareness is, of course, people don't read anymore in general. And I think it's not there in our cultural awareness because there is not one good movie that was done about the Mamluks. But if there were a good movie done about the Mamluks and siding with the Mamluks, okay, not that they are, the treacherous, bloodthirsty guys. Well, they were, but not, publicity. Movies are also publicity, and this is so people would be more interested, and they would start to do more research. They would do reading in general. Of course, all the monuments also have to be well restored for people to go and visit, and they would like to go to the monuments and enjoy them and enjoy the beauty of the richness. All of that needs to be put together, and you would have this awareness.
Yeah, you're right. Movies have a great impact.
But this is starting. It's starting slowly, but it will happen.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of movies, and since I personally know that you're a big fan of heroes and villains in specific, do you consider Sultan al-Mu'ayyad as your hero?
That's a very nice question. Heroes have ethics, and they have idealistic principles. Villains also have the same. That's why you like villains, like Dr. No, if anybody knows him, the Joker, you all know him because of the movie. You see, because of the movies, you remember. Bane in the Batman movies and all of that. These are villains. But they are heroes. They have principles. Al-Mu'ayyad Shaykh, I've been working on him for a very long time. I don't consider him my hero, but he was a very shrewd character who was very, very clever in tactics, his military tactics, in his political tactics, in his diplomatic tactics. He was a genius in that. But for him to be my hero, no way, because first thing is that he had his son killed. He killed his son. So where are the ethics there? In spite of being religious and in spite of building a great mosque and being passionate with the Sufis and all of that, he cannot be my hero. Heroes have certain ethics that you admire. I admire his actions, how he survived and but not the character. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Suzanne. But
no, disappointed. But now I'm curious. Who is your hero from the Mamluk dynasty? You made me curious now. Who is your hero from the Mamluk dynasty?
I think a hero would be Baybars al-Buntukdari, definitely, as a warrior and administrator. And then the next one that I like most is Sultan al-Nasr Mohammed. He was the emperor. Peace. He made peace. He was exiled twice. He had the longest reign for any Mamluk Sultan. He built wonderful buildings. He had peace. The Crusades were ended. The Mongols were struck up. He gave good properties to his emirs. Wealth, incredible wealth. I like the fact that he had a throne that was made of ivory and ebony.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very super. And then all the items that you find all over the world in museums all over the world of Al-Nasr Muhammad are always perfect. Perfect. Yani you can tell that this is Al-Nasr Muhammad even without reading the label of the object, because it's so good. And of course, yeah, go ahead.
So can I say that he will be the next person you will be writing about?
No. The next, I would like to write a history. I will be writing a history of the Mamluks in general, but if it's one character, of course, Sultan Qaitbay is the one. I mean, you have the culmination of affairs are with Sultan Qaitbay near the end of the 15th century. So about 8 years or 6 years after Sultan al-Mu'ayyid.
That's wonderful. So we have been receiving many questions about who are the designers and architects of these buildings. So we have one question from Ahmed Said or Said. He said the designers and the details of the buildings, the designs and the details of the buildings are amazing and well thought out. Did the Turks bring along their designers and architects to build these amazing buildings? Did they use any local manpower or skilled labor? Were there any attempts in Old Cairo after that era to follow on the same steps of thoughtful buildings? And can you give us an example? Many questions in one.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, actually. We know very few architects who built these monuments. In fact, the name of the architect of Sultan al-Mu'ayyid is written on the minarets over Bab Zuwaydah. And then there's an architect, the architect of Sultan Hassan is also written in one of the madrasas. Things like that, but they're not common. It's not a common thing. The architects were from everywhere in the empire, but the amazing thing is that the architects did their homework very well. Yani, they studied Cairo to the extreme. And they go wherever they came from, if they are Egyptian or non-Egyptian, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they did their homework very well, and they knew how to improve it within the context of Cairo itself. So they didn't get something Persian, for example. They didn't build a Persian building, a building that you find, for example, in Isfahan. You don't have that in Mamluk Cairo. You have Mamluk is Mamluk. Wallahi, when it came to the Ottoman period, okay, there were two trends. There were two trends. The nationalistic trend, which is the Mamluk, continued. And then the Ottoman, which is the foreign trendy chic trend, which is Ottoman, domes وحاجات كده. The amazing thing about the Mamluk architects is that they were within. The decoration can be different. They can get decorations from here and there, from China. They can get them from Iran, from elsewhere, but on the whole, it's Egyptian. So it really, and then there were guilds of architects and artists and craftsmen who were constantly traveling from one place to another. You go to where you find your business. Like today. We travel for business. Okay? And that's where we get our income. The same was with the craftsmen, the architects, and the artists. Wherever the market was, they would go and work. Not that they were not Egyptian. No, many of them were Egyptians as well. But it didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm. Another question from Mohammed Najjar. We have many questions, and I guess it's just fair to extend the meeting until 5 o'clock so that we can cover as much as we can.
We are here with whoever is here, and we were late we have this mess in the middle, so we don't. It's very nice to have all these people there.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question from Mohammed Najjar. Why succeeding sultans didn't build around this area? This building is standing alone there with no other monumental building.
No, this is wrong. Hi, Najjar, first. Nice to know that you're here. No, the area around Bab Zuwaydah is full of buildings. The biggest building is right across from the Mosque of al-Mu'ayyid, and that's the great wakala of Nafis al-Bayda, who was quite a prominent woman, rich woman, the 18th century. And she built a great wakala and Salif Kutab and the hammam that was just working just until a few years ago. And then there were palaces built in this area. And no, the area is full of buildings all around. It's not standing alone. Maybe the slides show that they're standing alone, but what you need to do is to come to Cairo sometime, and I'll show it to you, inshallah.
Inshallah. So we have another question. We have learned from your lecture that the Mamluk period was divided into Al-Bahri and Al-Jarkasi. Why did this division exist in the first place?
None of the modern historians did this division. It was Maqrizi who did this division, because the Bahri Mamluks were mostly from the Kipchak tribes in Central Asia until the time of Sultan Barkuk, when he took over. When he became the Sultan, he started importing thousands of Circassians, Sharakisa, of his own people, from his own tribes, to come to Mamluk, Egypt and Bilad al-Sham, and started appointing them in the best positions. And from there started the Circassian period, and there was very few Kipchaks after that. Therefore, we have from the late 1380s until 1517, the rulers were Circassian. Before that, they were all Bahri Mamluks. That's why we have this. And the division was done by, at least by Maqrizi, maybe by earlier, but I don't know.
I have a comment from Abigail Brown. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I think it's a comment. Is it possible to hire? It's a question, general one. Is it possible to hire a very good guide with some academic knowledge, perhaps from the university, as a guide to these buildings in Cairo? I have never been there, but I look at the architecture a lot online and would love to go when the pandemic is over.
You're most welcome to come to Cairo anytime. Of course, there are wonderful guides, specialists in Islamic Cairo. You can always get in touch with us, and we'll give you a list of wonderful, excellent guides. There, actually, that many of them are and the attendees. Although I don't have a list of the attendees, but many of them are excellent in the field. Yeah, sure.
So Zain Tarek is asking, were all Muslim empires ruled by Turks?
All Muslim empires ruled by Turks? No. All Muslim empires were. It's a very no. The short answer is no.
Okay. So, do you have any resources for those interested in reading more about the Mamluk dynasty and Sultan Muayyid Shaykh in specific that you recommend? Books or websites?
Yeah, I was waiting for that question actually. There are not many, but depends what you want to read, what kind of reading you like. One is that there is an excellent book that just came out a few years ago by Julien Loiseau, and that is called Les Mamelouks. It's in French. It's been translated in English and Arabic, and I translated in English and I think Arabic. I'm not sure, but that's a dense. It's not a history, but it's a dense study about the Mamluks. Very good, of course. Then, if you want to read about the mosques in Mamluk Cairo, there's the books by Professor Doris Behrin Zabustef, Cairo of the Mamluks, the Minarets of Cairo, an introduction to Islamic art and architecture of Cairo. There is also the books the publications by Professor Nasser Abbad at MIT, the Citadel of Cairo, Mamluk histories or history of Mamluk Cairo, something like that. These are great studies done. And then there are numerous articles that you can read by students, by the art historians. But then to get a whole history from A to Z about Mamluk history, you won't find. But what you will find is the old publications by Sandy Lane Poole, like the story of Cairo, like the history of Egypt in the Middle Ages. These are all online. They are PDFs. You can read online, very, very easy. You can scan them. And these are actually the best books about the history. I don't know how they wrote them. The history of Islamic Egypt in general is written there. And it's all a translation from the original sources of As-Suluk's Maqrizi Suluk. So I think this, and then modern also is, you can read the books by Hani Hamza. He has two well-known publications in Arabic, المماليك المصرية وحكايات المماليك, yeah, something around that. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly. But Hani Hamza, you'll get it right away. These are stories that can give you a background idea about the period in general.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tarek, for recommending these resources. I have another question from Ahmed Abul Ula. Is it true that Mamluk sultans were influenced by Sufi movements in Asia Minor, which connected philosophically related to heart of Asia and the Buddhist practices and shaman practices, which it may impact their hybrid artistic style?
They are certainly very much inspired by Sufis. Sufis had a big impact on the Mamluks. I don't know about the relationship with Central Asia, but I know that they had a very strong presence in Cairo, and that's why we have started to have khankas. Khankas are made for Sufis and Sufi practices and rituals. And then for Buddhism, I cannot say because I don't know. But I cannot find it impossible. But in order to answer this question, I have to do some research. But it's a very interesting question. I hope this is Ahmed Abul Ula. Ahmed.
Yeah, it's in English, but I think it's Ula, I think, or something.
Hello, Ahmed Abul Ula. That's a great scholar and a colleague of mine. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry for mispronouncing your name.
No, that's it.
Okay, Ahmed Salim is asking, we know that Sultan al-Mu'ayyad firstly planned to construct his congregational mosque at Bayn al-Qasrain zone. My question is, what was the motivation for selecting this current location? Did he compete with other sultans and emulate him in the architecture?
That's a very good question. That's where I started, and then I think it was cut. Yeah, he had this area in front of the Madrasa Sultan Barkook, and he didn't want to take it and went to Bab Zuela. It's a matter of ego. He wanted to be independent. He wanted to have his own there. He didn't want to have all these other great ones be there to crowd his presence. And it's an egoistic thing. I mean, he's a tyrant. I mean, he destroyed so many buildings in order to build his mosque at Bab Zuela. So, like if he would have followed the trend of the previous sultans, he would have built his mosque there. But he didn't. He wanted to have his own thing. Individuality, egoistic project. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Tarek. Another question, very interesting one, about the Muqarnas from Yu Chun Liao. Is the multi-tier Muqarnas structure common in Mamluk Egypt? And when did this structure start and where did it come from?
The Muqarnas decorations you find all over Islamic Cairo. And of course, as it goes older, it becomes more and more complicated. So here we cannot say that it's, with the Mosque of Al-Mu'ayyid, we cannot say that it's the height of Muqarnas decoration, but it's going up there, it's reaching that point. Muqarnas is a decorative feature that was found in Cairo on the minaret of Amir al-Giyushi, who is called Badr al-Gamali, who came and restored order in Egypt in the 11th century, the one who built the walls and the gates of Cairo, Al-Qahira. First time when Muqarnas is found is on the minaret there. Where did it come from? Probably it came from Armenia. Because, well, Armenia via Bilad al-Sham to Egypt. This is how I would say it came from. And then it then starts to blossom everywhere. And it's a nice decoration. It's a nice feature. Very stylistic and not easy to make.
Mm-hmm. I think this will be our final one for today. It's from Maysa Mustafa. She's asking, what are the differences between the Mamluk architecture in Cairo and the one in Damascus?
Hello, Maysa. Great question. Well, with my respects to all Syrians, and one of whom is Suzanne and Rand and all my Syrian friends, they're very sophisticated buildings in Damascus and in Damascus and Halab, definitely. Very, very sophisticated. But the difference is that Al-Qahira was the capital of the empire. So you get that extra touch in Cairo. So you have a Sultan. Maybe he would build a madrasa or a mausoleum or something in Damascus or Halab. But then in Cairo, he would build something that's really fantastic. Mostly in Damascus and Halab, we find many buildings of emirs, Mamluk emirs, great buildings. But when it comes to royalty, the royalty was Al-Qahira. You can say the same thing about Jerusalem. There is a very nice book about Mamluk Jerusalem. You'll find that Qaid Bey built in Jerusalem and Sultan al-Mu'ayyid, they restored the great mosque of Damascus and all of that. But when it came to something that is royal and it's for ceremonies and all of that, and I might be mistaken somewhere, but I think in Cairo, the idea that it is the capital of the empire, therefore it is near the citadel, it is, I don't want to say more prestigious, because Damascus could have easily been the capital of the empire except for its location, or Halab, but Halab is a little bit high, far away from in order to control affairs. But they are great. Every one of them is great. If you remove the wires and you remove the electricity and the pipes and all, like anywhere else, like in Cairo, okay, you just admire them and find them absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
I think it's time to wrap up today. I wish we had the time to answer all the questions, but I will be sharing Dr. Tarek's contact information.
There were more questions, come in?
Yes, but it's 5 o'clock already.
I'm dead.
I'll be sharing Dr. Tarek's contact information here for those of you who would like to contact him after this webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Tarek, for being with us today. It was my pleasure to moderate your lecture. And I'd like to thank everyone. Yeah, you're welcome, Doctor. My pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for devoting your time to attend this lecture with us. Looking forward for more webinars like this, inshallah, brought by our master's program of Islamic Art, Architecture, and Urbanism in the College of Islamic Studies at Hamad bin Khalifa University. Would you like to say anything, Doctor, before we end?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Suzanne, for moderating this. It's been really good. You've worked tremendously hard, as well as all the team behind the scenes. And I know how difficult it was during the mess that we had with my disappearing voice and whatever. I thank you very much, everybody, and I thank all the attendees, all those who attended the lecture and sparing the time. And it's a great pleasure to know that you're here with us. And inshallah, I hope to see you all in person soon when I get to Doha soon, inshallah.
Inshallah, we are looking forward to that. I wish you all the best. Have a good evening. Dumtum bi khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Bye bye.